We turn now to EQC, and Checkpoint can tonight reveal that the Earthquake Commission has written to the Minister, Dr Megan Woods, to signal their net assets are now as low as $287 million and will soon reach the $200 million mark that triggers the Crown Guarantee. In the 73 years EQC has existed, the Crown Guarantee has never been used. What does that mean? Well, since it came into existence in 1945, the Earthquake Commission has collected levies from the insurance premiums paid by you, probably for home and contents insurance policies. That money was effectively its own form of insurance against the cost of a massive earthquake. But a floor of $200 million exists, and the Crown has to step in at that point where the guarantee all costs will be met. And after Christchurch, the fund is now almost that low. Now, Megan Woods told me they've been charting the fund's descent and they absolutely knew this day would come. No surprises. I asked her how much money the government thinks will be required.
Well, that needs to be worked through, depending on what the outstanding liabilities are at that point at which they're assessed. So it's all complicated insurance accounting at that point. But the point of the matter is that people can have faith in EQC because we've had a really settled period of time where we didn't have a whole lot of seismic activity. And then we've had the last 8 years in New Zealand, and there's always been that guarantee for New Zealanders that sit there that if the fund is depleted, then there's a Crown guarantee that sits behind it.
And no one is saying this money shouldn't have been spent. But in 2010, before the earthquakes, it was $6.1 billion. It's now about $287 million. What happens if there is another major earthquake?
Well, I mean, that's something as a government that we'll need to face. So EQC, as well as the board, as well as doing the responsible thing of writing to me, letting me know that, are obviously working on the plan they need to put in place in order to refuel that fund. Because you're quite right, we have to think about that future. It's a when, not if, unfortunately, in New Zealand. But the Crown Guarantee sits behind EQC, and that's something of which New Zealanders can have a great deal of faith in their level of cover in New Zealand, and one of the reasons why reinsurers look on us so favourably.
Will we see this figure in the budget next week?
Look, it's not as simple as that. You won't see a line item, but what I can reassure you is this is something that we've known since we became government. It's something that we've known is coming while we've put together this budget, and it has not been far from our thinking, so it is certainly accounted for.
Can we talk about the cap? I don't know if you heard Sir Miller on Checkpoint the other day reacting to the case of Georgina Hannafin, who has hit cap or is hitting cap, which means that EQC can't give her more than $100,000. Her private insurer is saying this is EQC's muck-up, it is not our business. So she is left in a position of negative equity, mortgaged to the eyeballs with a house she can't sell, which is a disaster. Is the cap problematic when EQC haven't done their job well enough?
Well, that's still the live question, John, and that's a really frustrating thing for all of us. I don't think anyone could have listened to that story and not felt for the individual that's in that situation. They're heart-wrenching stories. But the problem is it's not clear that it necessarily lies with EQC. Look, if I could just wave a magic wand and fix this, believe me, I would have. But what we have to do is make sure that we sort out this complex problem, because there isn't just one story out there. We know there's at least 600 odd, and we need to find a way to fix this for people so they can get on with their lives.
Right, what is that way? Surely it requires some tweak or amendment to the Act that covers EQC and its cap, doesn't it?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is make sure that that liability does actually sit with EQC, and that's far from...
well, who else would... Sorry, Minister, who else could it sit with in these circumstances?
Well, it could be the way in which the private insurer interpreted the insurance policy. It could be the contractor. It could be the project management company. We've identified there's probably, and it could be EQC, there's probably about 4 places it could sit. So a letter from one of the people that could themselves be liable isn't the conclusive
But I've seen, forgive me for interrupting, because yes, it could sit with all of those people, but I've seen the contract between EQC and Fletcher's. It indemnifies Fletcher's against the buck stopping with them. In other words, this is a theoretical discussion. In the end, the only people who can own this are EQC or the private insurer. You can't go back to the contractors. It says that in writing.
Well, that's also the thing we're looking at. What the Fletcher's contract is indemnified for is the workmanship. What the question is whether or not Fletcher's had a duty as the project management office. That's what the contract is for. It's for their role as the project manager rather than the work itself. And I mean, this is where it gets complicated, and it's splitting legal hairs in the way they often are, and why it is complex and complicated and needs to be done properly.
Are you seeking legal advice on any of those options? And let's talk about the individual contractors, for example. Are you now looking at going back and pursuing individual contractors who did faulty work?
No, what we've sought the legal advice in EQC is the Crown law advice that they're getting around the Project Management Office in terms of what the obligations were there. There's the obvious, if there was faulty workpersonship, that there are guarantees for people in legislation already in terms of consumer guarantees.
The PMO, the Project Management Office, that was Fletcher's, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the Crown is absolutely seeking and receiving formal legal advice in terms of a case you could potentially take against Fletcher's.
EQC has asked for that advice.
Minister, it's great to have you. Just while we've got you on the phone, the Southern Response class action claimants, when will a settlement be announced with them, do you know?
Look, we're hopeful something will be able to announce soon.
When soon?
Soon.
Like next week?
Soon.
Okay, and any idea how big the settlement is?
Look, I can't talk about that yet, but I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you when it's appropriate.
And that will be full and final. That is the end of that. That's either a done deal for some of the claimants or a precedent for everyone else.
We'll have a discussion about it once we have something to say.
Megan Woods, the Minister, we will obviously cover that Southern Response class action in some detail.